Tango 1 at the top, we are at pop-up vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1, you have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action. Find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're doing the Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
Welcome to the Tango 1 podcast. I'm Tony Smith. I'm a retired cop and SWAT team leader and currently the founder of the Garage Gym and the owner of Tango 1 Solutions. I'm joined by my friend, fireman, the Timberwolf tamer, Amerson stuntman, Casey Wright, Garage Gym trainer extraordinaire. And our mission every week is to challenge you to guide you to create an immediate action plan against your problems and your weaknesses. Simply put, we just want you to do more and be more. So today, we are welcoming Jeff Casey. He is a former ergonomist turned owner and publisher of Snapd, which is a Windsor publication that highlights local businesses, achievements, and all kinds of great things, which we'll talk about more. He's a dad, he's a husband, and he's a cancer survivor. But most of all, the way I know him is as a philanthropist. He's on countless boards, charitable contributions, like I'm talking like a list of them, namely the 100 Men Who Give a Damn. He was an award winner with me, actually, as that's one of the places we hung out, Association of Fundraising Professionals Award. He also is an ambassador for the CMHA Soul Focus Project. He's an ambassador of Hope with the Windsor Cancer Research Group and all kinds of other things. But one of his biggest projects is he's the event director for Play for a Cure, which has raised tons and tons of cash for the local cancer society, and we will talk about that in tons. So, Jeff, thank you for showing up today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Great to meet you guys, and can't wait to get this info out there.
Good. So it is about 95 degrees in the studio today. We got this beautiful logo, but we can't afford the air yet, so we're getting there. And we signed our first advertisement today, so maybe one day we will have air. Thank you, Steve Kidd, financial advisor for Edward Jones, and we'll be starting to promo him next week. But yeah, so today's episode, man, I really would love to talk about attitude, your philanthropy, and just being a warrior, because you have done some battling and it's been very impressive. So I want to get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of odd, right, when you're sitting here and have to talk about yourself. But I think I do have a pretty good story because I was able to overcome, having cancer. And I know that's something that a lot of people have battled with and are battling with, and some people have lost the battle. And, for myself, I actually take it all the way back to my childhood. And I think it's more so about how I was raised. I had very strong influence from my mom and my grandparents, even more specifically. My grandfather, he had this belief that having the right attitude meant everything in the world. So he had a manufacturing company called Horizon Plastics, and he had a good number of employees. And he was the type of guy that would stroll the floor, talk to everyone, hand out the paychecks, hand out the bonuses, shake everyone's hand. And he always had this attitude pin, and it was a pin that's just the word attitude, and you wear it on your right side or your right collars, showing people that you have the right attitude. And where that comes from is a poem that's written by Charles Swindoll. You should look it up. I don't know the whole poem off heart, but I do know that the most important line is that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And that doesn't matter if whatever bad things happen to you. Can be driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. Why did they cut you off? You have no idea. But maybe their headspace is in their son's in trouble, or they're in a fight with this person, or they're on the way to the hospital. Whatever it is, how you react to it kind of determines the outcome for that. If you let that get to you and stress you out, then that's going to ruin your day for something that you have no control over. If you don't let that type of stuff control you. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed, I'd say a relatively younger age, around 70, 71, I believe he was. And he had a really strong influence on my cousins and I. So there's 5 of us, and he went through a thing called Lewy body's disease. So it's kind of affected him physically and mentally. So there would be bouts of where he wouldn't know where he was, and then there'd be other bouts of he wouldn't know who was around him. It was kind of a cross between dementia and Parkinson's. So it was very challenging, especially for my grandmother at the time and all of us, because he was everything to the family, right? He was such a strong example, military guy. He was a Rotarian. He started 2 of probably the biggest Rotary fundraisers in North America even. May have changed now, but he started this one called the Waterfront Festival. So I'm from Cobourg, which is about an hour east of Toronto, right on Lake Ontario, about 15,000 people. And he was one of the people that started this Waterfront Festival, and it gets well over 100,000 people that come to it from all over, like Kingston to Toronto type thing. It's just a really cool little event that happens. They sell ribs, and there's a beer tent, and there's music, and there's hundreds of vendors that show up, and the carnival, all that good stuff. We're going back a good number of years now. And then the other one he started was this thing called the Sportsman's Night, and it was simply a genius thing because it was just a big silent auction and live auction. So if you can imagine, you'd sell 150 tickets or 200 tickets to it, and there's 350 items that you would go bid on, and they were all donated. So my grandpa, being a little bit more, he was very well connected in the community, and because of his business and whatnot, and so the event just kind of blew up. It still goes on to this day, and it's in honor of my grandfather. So I mean,
that's amazing.
He's won international awards. So he was just this little guy too. Like, I think he was. I never even thought of this because he's such a big person in my mind. I bet you he was 5'8", 140 pounds. Like,
really?
Yeah. Isn't that, it's like I was describing him. You immediately picture like some type of man, right? And you would never picture a little guy like that. But yeah, he was just a little guy.
So I know you walk around with the attitude pins and you hand them out. That was one of the first times we met, Greg Grondin and I from the GL Heritage Brewing Company.
Yeah.
We met you at a cancer. We were actually getting an award for raising some money.
Yeah.
And you gave this incredible speech about your battle with cancer, and it was kind of what brought Greg and I back to the table to make another run with the Cruising Brews last year.
Sorry about that. You were on the fence, if I remember correctly. Or maybe you were on the wrong side of the fence even. I was like, no, you cannot let this go.
So we always say in like policing, and then in this gym, we've kind of carried that same thing down here, is that when in times of stress, you're always going to fall back to your training. So from the point where you were a little kid, being taught by your grandfather, attitude was everything.
Yeah.
How is that kind of applied? You've fallen back. Like, it wasn't real training, but it was training, man. That's like how you're going to pass it on to your kids, and I'm passing on to my kids.
I'd say it's exactly training. I mean, if you've got kids, you're training them every day. Like, if it's not physically, it's mental, psychological, emotional, right? There's more to a person than just physical, mental, emotional. There's spiritual and psychological. Those are the 5 things that shape you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to, like, however you're going to act in life is based on essentially what you're shown and what examples are set for you. So yeah, and this is exactly it. So when my grandfather passed, my cousin and I started Attitudes for Education. The 2 big things in him that he tried to instill in us was attitude and education. So we started a scholarship foundation in Cobourg, extremely unique. I reached out to a couple of organizations, and they said, no, you shouldn't do it like that. You should do it like this, which like this was how everyone else does it. And we're like, no, that's not our goal. That's not our objective. Our objective is to support somebody who's going to post-secondary education based on their attitude. We're not going to ask for their transcripts, so we don't care about their grades per se. We're not going to consider their financial need. We're gonna judge their application based on what they provide to us, based on them having the right attitude. And there's arguments for all sides of that, but it's very unique in that, there's kids that maybe their mom and dad could afford to pay them to go to school, right? So that's kind of like, well, do you really want to give that maybe that kid doesn't want money from their mom and dad or for their grandparents. They want to take care of themselves, and because they got 85 and 90 and they worked 3 jobs, they volunteered this, they did music, they all these different things that they did to help support themselves. why should they not be able to qualify for some type of scholarship? Because really what we're doing is we're rewarding that person. We're not rewarding their grades, right? So not only were we able to support, that student that had the 85 and did all that stuff, there's students that would have 65 that were going to a trade school that, dad was out of the picture, mom was sick. They worked to support their family. Chances of them getting 85 or 90s, very, very low. So that's the other thing we did. Scholarships for university, scholarships for college, and scholarships for trade school. We actually ended up giving a scholarship to a student that was in a penitentiary. There's a Brookside Penitentiary for youth in Coburg. And he applied and filled out the application and provided us with a music CD that he had created and that he had applied to, I think, a school in Ryerson and gotten in. And so there was a lot of kind of things that had to happen. But we gave this kid a scholarship to help get him moving forward. So and it was incredible. I mean, so what we did was we held a golf tournament to raise money, and all the sponsors and the players come, but we invited all the scholarship winners. So all the scholarship winners would come, and the first year was nine scholarship winners, and they each got $1,500 plus $1,000 for each year school that they stayed in, and we invited their parents with them. But the parents we put at a table by themselves. And then all the kids we put with the sponsors and the participants. And the student had to lead the conversation. So we gave them questions, and they had to introduce themselves, and they had to engage the people that were supporting them for their scholarship. And that was all cool. And then at the very end of the night, which made everyone cry, and it was always incredible, my cousin Kaylee would get up and she would introduce every single scholarship winner. And they would come up to the front. This makes me cry every time. He would come up to the front, and at the very end, standing ovation every single time, everyone in the room. And we did this for 15 years. We don't do it anymore. It's just too logistically. But every single person in the room, standing ovation. The students themselves are in shock and awe. They didn't expect this, right? It's a scholarship. Most times you get a check in the mail or something, you don't get recognized, you don't get thanked, you don't get that support in a way that means so much more than just the money. I would argue, right? All these people standing there clapping for you, something that probably none of them have ever experienced, right? You know what I mean? There's a feeling of pride, and so there's I don't know. It was always just incredible. And so, and that was it's all based on attitude, right? So this is all this, us trying to honor and support our grandfather. So, and I'd say we're still in training, right? We've taken what he's taught us, how he's led us to develop into a human, and we're carrying it forward. We're moving it forward. Little did I know, and I would argue that it was really in preparation for me to deal with something really big, right? Cancer.
Yeah, let's go there then. Let's talk about that. So you fall back on your training. We keep saying that. We hire based on attitude. That's how we got Casey here. I mean, we hire based on attitude, core values, which is essentially kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of people right now, you talk about falling back on your training, everybody's dealing with this COVID and the pandemic, and kids work, doing school from home, and you're working from home, and all these struggles. And I think that, hopefully, if you put yourself in a really good place, you're able to batten down the hatches like a sailor in a storm, and then at some point you're going to come back out of this on the other side. And I think your story with your battle with cancer really lends to that. But also, I'm hoping that people listening, it'll lend to this perspective of to deal with, to put their problems in perspective, and also for those who have big problems to understand that there is, if you keep pushing forward, there is light at the other end, right?
Yeah,
you will
absolutely.
come out resilience, right? Walk through fire, come out the other side.
Yeah.
And I think too, with the whole idea of talking about teaching a lesson and things like that, it isn't necessarily it's not written on a piece of paper. Like when you brought up the story with your grandfather, it's not your grandfather. Maybe he did, or without meaning to, he wasn't setting out to raise these charity event organizers. Right. That's just something he did out of the kindness of his heart, and he tried to push forward those beliefs and morals towards you. And just so happened, obviously, you fell into those shoes and continued to do that on yourself, right? So I think it also, you don't have to worry so much about I need to, create this in my kid or create this in my family, just putting off that positive attitude is gonna rub off in some way or another. And it doesn't necessarily have to go the path you want it to, but that could go in another job career that if that positive attitude helps with anything, like if you become a trainer and now you just want to be a positive person to 300 people, that's just as important as if it would lead you down this other
I
path.
fully agree with that, and I was thinking that on the way here is, like, there's in our community, there's people that you see all the time. They're out giving or giving back, and then there's a lot of people that are like quietly doing it. But then there's also like people that just take care of their family, like not just take care of their family. I don't mean like that, but there's a lot of like, it doesn't make anyone better than the other. It's just kind of what you enjoy and how you want to give back or how you want to pay it forward. I mean, which is mainly probably one of the bigger reasons that I do this too. Is you try to leave it better than you found it.
Yes.
Right. So that's probably the thing that drives me the most right now. So you raise a very good point, and I agree 100% with it. I mean, and even go back to my grandfather, which I always do anyways, but like he carried this through more in his work, I'd say, than anything. Right. I didn't really get a chance to know him that well in his work life per se, right? Like when you get time to, as a 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, to sit with your grandpa, you're not talking shop typically, right? It's, my grandpa liked to fish, he liked to hunt, and it was actually with him, it was always organizing everything and cleaning up and work, right? Like you go to the cottage with grandparents and there was a very long list of tasks to accomplish before you could sit down and have a Coke with your grandpa, right? Right. So it's very true, but so if you want to get into the whole cancer thing,
I think it's an inspirational story, and I think it just will lend some motivation to people to keep pushing with what they're doing and to fall back on their training, to make sure that they're taking care of their mind and ingraining these things in their children. I know, Casey, I could tell that was hitting home with you. You lost your grandfather recently, very influential to you, and you're taking on the path and you're carrying on those things that he carried or that he passed on to you. And
he did a lot of it's almost like everything you're stating is the same thing that I was very lucky to have as a kid. Right, we grew up in that same thing. We'd be at camp and it'd be our cottage, and it would be it'd be a long list of things to do. And there were so many lessons that my grandfather instilled in me that at the time I didn't notice or didn't realize. Right, the little things of I'd cut his grass every week, and instead of he was an engineer and owned crane company and started again. He had a lot of charity organizations under his name that he would donate to, but it would still be, what's the minimum wage right now? That's what you get paid to cut my grass, right? And it was all those lessons, you don't just get it because you're here or you're under there. You work for what you get, and then you appreciate it so much more, right? And all the lessons that, being in the backyard, trying to level out landscape the backyard, and instead of just him doing it and me watching, him actually showing me how to do it and how to use a surveyor and a level, all these lessons are so important in my life now, and it's just those little things you don't realize. And he probably had no direction as to how I'm going to use it, but teaching me all these skills and tasks. Did he? Yeah, or maybe he did. I
tell you one thing. I guess I'm the senior person in the room. As you get older, you become wiser, right? And the rationale behind doing things may be apparent to me, but not to you, right? And not that I'm wise, but I'm certainly sure that your grandfather was, and he probably realized that he's not teaching you how to survey the backyard.
Right.
That was not his goal, right?
Right.
He's training you.
Yeah.
To use your terminology here, that's exactly what he was doing, right?
Cheers to those men right now.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Cheers, I got you that. My grandpa was a rum and coke guy.
All right, so Let's hear it, man. We read the blog last night.
Oh, Jesus.
I've heard the story in person and then read that blog that you wrote many years ago now.
Yeah.
Probably feels like a lifetime ago to you. Cause
it does. It was just over 11 years ago now. I mean, it's kind of I could tell the whole minutia of the story as best I remember these days. I was actually golfing with a buddy like my best friend of all things at a golf course, wooden sticks, and I decided to go away for a weekend with him, and I just didn't feel right, and I felt like I had this little tickle in my throat, and so I was doing cough drops and trying to golf and have a couple beers, and just felt off, right? So ended up finishing our round, and we stayed overnight. Next morning, tried to golf, still didn't feel right, and then I ended up going to our cottage, and my wife was there, and my grandmother was there. And my wife at the time was, I think, 36 weeks pregnant. And I remember being in the cottage. I remember this very vividly, looking in the mirror, trying to look down my throat, and I could see something looked kind of off. And so I grabbed a flashlight, and then I looked down my throat, and there was a massive lump. And my first thought was, holy shit, that's cancer. Like, I don't even know why I would think that. Like, there's no reason for me to. There's no family history or anything like that. But then I showed my grandma, and she's like, no, that's tonsillitis. And essentially that's what happens. Your tonsils will inflame when you get tonsillitis, but typically little white spots come, like little pus things. So I didn't think too much of it, but it's still in the back of my mind that this is maybe a little bit like something I need to deal with right away. So back to Windsor we came, and went to the doctor. And I won't mention this asshole doctor's name, but he looked down my throat very quickly and gave me a prescription for Biaxin and said, away you go.
It's in the blog, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't want to speed up.
And so, 8-9 days go by and nothing's really changed. And so I decided to go to the West Windsor Urgent Care Center, and Dr. Wawark was there, Jocelyn Wawark, little godsend woman. And she will say calmly panicked. Like, so she was extremely professional, joking around, and she's like, I don't know what this is. It's likely an abscess, but we need to deal with it. So why don't you go get a chest x-ray, because they had one at the West Windsor Urgent Care Center, and then I want you to go get some blood work done, and then we're going to see about getting you in to see an ear, nose, and throat specialist. So when they start to take you seriously in the hospital setting, you kind of start to think, okay, this is serious, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're taking this seriously. She's doing a lot of things. So I'm starting to get a little bit worried. I go to get the x-ray. I'm sitting there waiting for maybe 10 minutes. She comes in to check on me. So, the worry level goes up just a little bit. I get the chest x-ray, come out. We've exchanged numbers now. And so she texts me. She's like, okay, so you're going to the blood clinic now, and, I'll be in touch with the ENT. Whatever. Okay, so I go get the blood work done. As I'm leaving, I get a text from her. Okay, you have a meeting, an appointment with Dr. Ling. I think this was on a Thursday, but it was about 3-4 days later that I got an appointment with a ear, nose, and throat guy. That's impossible, right? Unless like you put a little asterisk beside your name or whatever. So, anyways, I go to see Dr. Ling. So we've moved about 2 weeks or so now, right? So my wife is now 37, 38 weeks pregnant. So we're at home, we're preparing for a child, and there's this layer of worry. But like the baby's room is done, and we're monitoring, and we're going to doctor's appointments for her and everything like that. But so then we got to go in to see Dr. Ling, and my wife's sitting there, and he looks down. He's a little chitter chatter, and he's got 4 daughters of his own, I believe. And he looked down my throat, and he kind of steps back. He's like, we got to get that out, and we got to get it out now. I'm like, why? And he kind of looked away from me, but then he looked at me dead in the eye, and he said, I think it's cancer. And so that was the moment that you're like, that all the stuff that you were worrying about is a little bit more real. He's like, I don't know. I can't guarantee obviously anything, but we got to get it out. He's like, come with me. So we went. These are the stories that I'm probably not supposed to tell, but I went to the front desk, and he's like, when's my next time in the OR? Because they have to book it in advance, obviously, or they have their schedule, their 8-hour blocks. And he's like, okay, so it's next Tuesday, or like in like 3-4 days. He's like, okay, bump this person, and put Jeff right there. So there, like, so you can hear the emotion in my voice right now, right? Kind of starting to relive this. So from there, it's okay. We got the appointment. We're gonna have the surgery. They're gonna take out my tonsils, which is where it is, and then they're gonna try to scrape around to see whatever else is in there. So we go back home, and starting to try to contemplate everything, right, of what's going on, and so then I go in for my surgery, and everything goes very well, and get the tonsils out. And he said he was able to scrape it all out, and he's fairly certain he got it all. And he should get results in 7 to 10 days, because that's go to pathology at that point, right? So now, Deletta, my wife, is 39 weeks pregnant. And after the surgery, we go home. I don't know if you've had your tonsils out, but as a kid, it's like freezies and ice cream, and you're good in a couple days. As an adult, it's absolutely horrendous. Like they essentially cauterize your entire throat, right? So, and the pain was so intense, and he gave me the, I can't do like narcotics at all. So he gave me T3s with like a little bit of like with codeine, like it was kind of like maybe the max narcotic I can do without like really strongly reacting. And the very first night, the pain started kicking. I tried to take these T3s with chocolate pudding, and I threw up everywhere. Like it was like a crazy amount of pain. Like the pain would not subside for that. It was the worst. So by the end of it, I was taking T3s every 2 hours. So anyways, fast forward to September 24th, 2008, and my wife goes into labor like 2:00 in the morning. This is 8 days after my surgery, so I'm still in a crazy amount of pain, but we get her to the hospital. Everything goes really well. Isabella's born September 24th around 6:54 in the evening. I'm still popping the Tylenols every couple hours. I sleep on the floor. I'm out of Tylenol, so I have to go get more. And so the next morning I have a doctor's appointment. My wife is still in the hospital, right? Isabella was born like 6:00, right? And I was gonna go by myself. My wife's like, no, you gotta take, like, your grandma should come with you. She was the only one kind of there. She's like, no, somebody has to go with you. Let your grandmother go. So this is when I start to tear up a little bit. So the next morning, go meet with Dr. Ling, and get in his office, sitting there with my grandmother, waiting for Dr. Ling to come in, and sitting there. He comes in, and like how's Isabella? Like he knows where everything's at, right? And I show some pictures, and he's all happy. He's got the papers, and the nurse comes in the room, says, "Sorry to interrupt, but I have Dr. Ham on the phone. You got to talk to her." So he's like, "Okay, don't look at these," and he puts the papers on the desk, and he leaves. So he leaves. It comes back in like 5 minutes, and he's like, "Okay." So we got the results of the pathology. I know I wasn't expecting them. I was going to get some T3s, another prescription or whatever. And he's like, "Okay." So we got the results, and it's cancer. Like it was called follicular non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that Dr. Ham, who just called me, that's your oncologist, and I've made an appointment for you to see her in 3 days or whatever. So like these people had gone like above and beyond to kind of help me out, because my wife just had a baby, and there's so much going on, so much positive stuff going on, and then we have to deal with this, right? So that was kind of hard to deal with. Like, I know.
I can imagine.
It's because there's so many things going on in your head, right? Of you just had your first child, and you just had your first child. Like, there's the greatest moment of your life, having a child, and then you get dealt like cancer. It's like, holy shit. So my grandma and I went back to my house. I had to gather myself before I could get back to the hospital, because I had to tell my wife, right? So we did, and I think I cried a lot and just tried to get out as much as I could before I could maybe get enough courage to go back and talk to Deletta. So then we had to go back to the hospital, and I had to tell her that I had just been diagnosed with cancer. So that's the beginning of the story.
That is insane.
Yeah.
And just bringing the timeline is like, that's all within 2 weeks, right? Of your official diagnosis.
Yeah.
And your wife having your first child.
There's so much thrown, and see, my wife's, both of her parents had passed of cancer as well, and her dad had passed I think in 2002, and her mom was in, I think it was 98. And I was actually diagnosed with the same cancer that her mom had. So she told me years later, but she said, in that moment is when I started to plan for life without you.
Oh my God.
Right? Isn't that,
Yeah.
that's intense, right?
And realistic, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like
That would describe her too. Like she's a realist for sure. But I mean, so like it was like I still cannot put my head in the space of where I was at, because it was so chaotic inside, right? You know, I fast forward a little bit. And this goes to what we were talking about even a little bit before this started. I took a lifestyle change program at hospice after I'd been given the green light and clear to the cancer, because I was struggling so much mentally, emotionally, psychologically. Like I would have these fits of rage, fits of uncontrollable crying, like just emotion that I couldn't control. Like I remember once played hockey with all the guys and like feeling kind of normal, and as I left, just I had to pull over. I just couldn't control myself. And what the lifestyle change program taught me was that, based on how I dealt with things, is that I compartmentalized the mental and the physical side of things. And I put myself in a space to just do it. I had to physically decide to go do things, treatment, scans, tests, blood work. And I put aside the psychological and the emotional and the spiritual. So I didn't really deal with a lot of my emotions or the psychology side of things. I mean, I dealt with the mental side of things of, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to throw up, or I'm constipated, and I can't sleep, and like all the physical things that happen to you, but you just mentally deal with them rather than getting into the emotional side of things. So when I was given the green light, then everything kind of transitioned into finding that what we call a new normal. You're never going to get back to that normal. Like there's no way that you can go through something like that and be the same person, right? You're going to use everything that you had to get to the other side, but you're going to be different psychologically, mentally, spiritually, probably physically. Yes, psychologically, like all of those different aspects have been changed. I mean, that kind of happens every day in a way too, but not on such a grandiose scale, right?
Right. So it keeps coming. It seems to keep coming back over and over, this same kind of topic. So with me, with the PTSD and the mental illness, and how it was explained to me, and with Casey from his wolf attack, is a lot of the emotions. If you don't deal with the emotional side of things, you can't control when it's going to pop up. And like for you, at the most random times. For me, one of my lowest points was 2 days after Cruise and Brews raising almost $50,000 for people. I found myself in the same situation at my cottage, laying on the floor. And if you don't deal with the emotional side of what you went through, physically you pushed through, right? Mm-hmm. And physically you push through, and I push through, and people who are listening will push through whatever their obstacle is. But if you don't deal with what went on inside your head, it's going to come back, and you can't control when it comes back, right?
Right.
So I think that's
how it's going to come back.
Exactly.
Like stuff that comes out of you that you didn't even know you had. By the sounds of it, that's what you experienced, right? Like, the hell, why am I lying on the floor? Like, why am I pulled over? Why am I thinking these thoughts even?
Right.
Like, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to think about that. What the hell?
And then my experience was it was always after a peak. You know?
Yeah.
Like, you fall hard. You hit, like, something a high note, like raising a ton of money, which is something you've done a ton of times. Or, you know, beating cancer, having a great night with your friends.
Yeah.
And then it's a hard fall. And usually, for me at least, the people closest to me took it the hardest, because I would come home in the same kind of fits of rage, and Danny would take the brunt of like my not violence, but my contempt. I guess, my anger. So, you know, one thing I think it's important to talk about with the cancer is that with your bout with cancer is you talked greatly about the Cancer Society and the cancer clinic. How you were treated in there. And
absolutely.
And stuff. And like this gym in particular, probably a lot of people listening have spent a lot of time and money donating towards those causes with Cruise and Brews Row Against Cancer and what we got going forward. And then you, with a lot of people who are tuning in to hear your interview with the Play for a Cure. So Like, let's talk about some of the things that place, because it's funded almost all through volunteer work, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there's the cancer clinic, of course, which is part of the hospital. Then there's the Cancer Center Foundation, right? Which their main objective is to purchase equipment and support the staff that are there. There's a ton of different cancer organizations in our region. The Canadian Cancer Society would be one of them. They do tremendous work. They're the ones that do the Relay for Life. They have programs for peer support, for instance, which is something where if I'm at the time I was 34, I have a job, I've got just new baby, they will pair me with somebody in the North America that was in a similar situation, so that you have somebody to talk to, because immediately when you get cancer, there's a club. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's something that I've been through, that if you haven't been through it, then you won't fully understand all those aspects that we talked about. So to be able to speak to somebody like that is a huge asset. It turned out for myself that my wife had a friend that had gone through the same thing 4 years before me. So I had him to call, and at any moment I could give him a call, and he answered, and I could talk about the medication, what my concerns were, like with how do you deal with the job, how you deal with your wife, and like just
My mom did this for people too. My mom's a cancer survivor. She did that
through the Canadian Cancer Society.
I don't know who she was with. I was young.
Well, hospice would do it as well.
She was helping.
Yeah, and that
Those
was
are programs we don't think of.
Yeah.
Who haven't been through this. Like,
Yeah,
you
my
talked about-
huge value.
My dad was involved with a lot of it after his go with cancer, and it was like just like heaven sent in the way of how he went through his stuff and how he talked to people, and like getting help is like someone's gone through it. Unfortunately, someone else has also gone through it, and they can give you a bit of advice.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it as well. So that was one of the first things I did when I was done. As soon as I thought I was in a good enough place, and so then I ended up talking to a whole bunch of people and just shoot the shit with them, and they ended up feeling a lot better. And they all say the same thing. Like, it's really nice to finally talk to somebody was in a similar place, right? But yeah, so I can tell you, like, my very first steps into the cancer center were scary as hell, and I didn't have the best experience, to be honest. I think, like I had said earlier, I had kind of decided to physically and mentally deal with this. So I had prepared my 4 pages of questions. I had my aunt beside me, who was a nurse, and my wife, and we were going in on a mission. We're going to go in and we're going to get answers to all of my questions, and I'm going to challenge this, and I'm going to challenge that, and I want to know more about this, et cetera, et cetera. And, you walk in and it's beautiful. Like, it's like, and it really is like the best, worst place to be, because you feel okay in there. I mean, you don't want to be there, but at least they've done a really nice job to making you feel okay. So you meet the first girl at the reception, and Mary was great, and it was very organized. And then the first person I had to talk to was a support worker. And that support worker, no offense to her, but she wasn't right for me from the very beginning. Hi, Jeff. How are you doing? Okay? Yeah, I am. I'm here to see the doctor. I got my list of questions ready. And how are you feeling? I don't know. Like, I'm not. No. Like, and I cut it short, and I was like, sorry, this isn't for me right now. Like, this is maybe something that I can come back to, but right now I need to go see my doctor. So we just kind of left, and then we get up to see the doctor, and then it was the intake nurse, and the nurse had a lot of questions for me, which was fine, but then she started giving me all the information about the drugs that I was going to be taking, and I'm like, excuse my language, I know, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I haven't even been told by my doctor what drugs I'm taking, nor have I been given a very specific diagnosis. I don't have a second opinion or a third opinion. Like, what the fuck is going on? I didn't say that, but that's kind of what's going in my head, right? So I'm going through all of this, and then the doctor comes in, and it's Dr. Ham, and she spends an hour and a half with me. Like, and it was just incredible, right? Didn't have an answer to this. Give me 1 second. And she'd leave, and she'd come back, and she'd have the answer. Okay, well, and the results from this test. Oh, come with me. It's on my computer. And this is where this is, and this is where that is. And it's like a whole hour and a half. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, I kind of expected to be like, right? But got all the answers and got everything. Felt really good. And, and then, so, we talked a little bit, and They were fairly confident that they'd removed all the cancer, and the treatment path that they were confident in was this. And I went and I got a second opinion from Carmanos, and they have this whole cool intake process for international patients. They take your slides and your file, and they have meetings every Thursday, I think it was, where not only do the oncologists, but the radiologists, the nurses, the pathologists, all these different people case review every single case that comes in. And then they come back with a recommended treatment regimen. And they came back with the same one that Dr. Hammond had, which is the same as what Cancer Care Ontario had prescribed for that particular cancer. I took it to the next level, got a third opinion. A friend had reached out to me that works for the BC Cancer Agency. So I sent my slides there, and he reviewed them, got me a little bit more specific information, which may or may not have been necessarily needed. And then decided that my treatment plan could be delayed, I think, a couple of weeks. So we screwed off, went to the cottage, came back. I was to start treatment at 8 a.m. It was on a Thursday, and I was one of the first patients in. Have you been I don't know if you haven't been to the cancer center, you walk in, there's a centered by a nurse station. To the left, there's 5 beds that are separated. On the other side, there's 11 beds and a bathroom, and then there's a whole thing for heated blankets, which are the best thing in the world. And then there's 3 or 4 private rooms, and then on the other side, there's about 12 chairs for people that can sit up and get treatment. So my nurse, she, Maggie, never forget her. She grabbed me, took me to bed number 1. I'm the head nurse. You're in my charge today. You're in bed 1, and I'm going to be watching you like a hawk. So you don't worry. You're here. And away we go. It was great, right? I mean, that's exactly kind of what you want. Like somebody like Maggie, who is a take charge, take no bullshit. I know what I'm doing, and you're going to be fine, right? No better feeling than that when you're going to go through that. Right. And I would say, for the record, I felt like, and I was 33 at the time, I was the youngest person there, right? Like, I know Windsor doesn't deal with pediatric oncology. I think that typically under 18 and under, you have to go to London, right? Yeah, I think that's the number. But anyway, so I felt out of place. I mean, I didn't want to be there, obviously, but so I started on just a regular IV or saline solution. I had a port put in my chest, right, which is like they put it under the skin, and it's a little rubber pad, and it's attached to your vein, so you can get the drugs kind of right in, right. So first saline solution, and then I got into some. I had to take antihistamines. Just orally, and then they started me right into the Rituxan. And the Rituxan was the one that they were worried about, because it's not actually a chemotherapy drug. It's called a monoclonal antibody, but it was kind of like the wonder drug. It was the one that kind of helped move everything forward, or I don't even know how it works. But within about 45 minutes, I started to react to it, which is what they're worried about. So they immediately had to stop it because I had broken out in hives. My throat was starting to get itchy, and it was swelling, so it was kind of starting to close. But within me, like putting my hand up, they were over, and they stopped giving me the medication probably within 3 seconds type thing, right? And into more antihistamine. They switched the bags. I think I got another one via IV. They got it under control, and then they had to change the rate at which I was given the medication, right? So if you can take it at the regular rate, I think it should take about an hour and a half. They had to give it to me, and it took, I think, like 4.5 hours, and I didn't develop the hives or the tingly throat or anything like that. So, because it's really important that I get this medication, right? So then after that was done, and then I get into the chemotherapy drugs, which are, I mean, some of those are, vincristine is this crazy nasty drug that makes your fingers numb and turns your pee red. And actually, it's so toxic that I wasn't allowed to handle my daughter for 2 days after treatment. I think they said 24 hours, but we always took it this step further and said 48 hours. So for 48 hours, I couldn't touch my daughter at home, which is really tough, right? Especially because, don't forget, she's maybe 4 weeks old at this point.
That was one of the toughest things for my mother-in-law, was the no contact with the kids. I remember that. Yeah, it's crazy. Like the little things that you would never think of, right? Like a hug, from grandkids or your kids, whatever that may be.
kind of crazy. So I got all the cancer center closes at 4:30, and they all knew that I had a daughter, and so they all, like, everyone was kind of like feeling sorry for me, if you will, or they just wanted to make sure that my experience was as best it could be, right? Maybe that's the other way to look at it. So they ended up staying an hour and a half late, the whole cancer clinic, so that I could get my treatment that day and not have to come back the next morning.
Wow.
Like,
That's awesome.
wow was right, and that was Maggie.
That's an incredible story of people who go above and beyond to do their jobs, and there's so many
For
like
people,
that in this
right?
world,
Just-
and that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, you might not think it's a big deal to you for you to stay that extra half hour after work, but like hearing that story and seeing it just, like, what a difference that makes and how much that impacts your life. It's just like, go the extra mile every once in a while, because you have no idea what a difference it can make.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here was because I want the Garage Gym Army, the people that are listening, to understand we don't always put a face to the people who are being helped. And I know we talked about that at the Cruise and Brews. Remember, we had the Warriors
I remember.
sit down and roll.
I was asked, and I couldn't commit because I had something else to do. Otherwise, I would. But then I showed up.
Yeah,
I got there.
Showed up out of the crowd and hugged me out of nowhere and made me start bawling.
Yeah,
like,
sorry.
I think it's important to people to, like, hear stories like yours so they understand, because, like, we talked about it before. We're always being asked for money for everything, right? For this, for that. But when you are donating, there's people just like you, and there's somebody like you probably right now going through something similar, and like, you're the person we're helping. My aunt, my uncle, my cousin, your neighbor. It's somebody that just like us, just a normal person like you that has come into some terrible circumstance that needs our help. So this is why we raise the money that we raise. And, like, I would love to shift kind of towards that, because I mean, I think I've done pretty decent as far as raising money for charity, but you are, like, on another level, and it's just, I mean, it's a super inspirational to me. You're one of the guys that we were joking about it before. You get in this, like, charity raising circle and fundraising circle, and you start to meet people, and then you see the same faces at a lot of different events, and you're one of those guys. I know you're really humble, and you said nothing's off limits. How much money do you think you have raised in a ballpark for this, like, for the community and for the community? You were doing these things when you were, like, in freaking high school.
Oh,
like,
I don't know.
This, like, scholarship.
How much money? That's a good question. I've never actually thought about that, because Attitudes for Education, I'm going to say that we raised over, not raised. I mean, there's a difference, and this is a distinction I'd like to make, and make people think about your gross profits versus your net profits. Right. The Scholarship Foundation, we gave away in 15 years over $700,000. Right. So we raised a lot more than that, because there's expenses there's okay to have expenses, right? Because you need to kind of, typically, in a way, you need to host some type of event to raise the money.
Yeah, it's something I've been learning the hard way lately. When we first started out, it was always like every single dollar goes to the fund, but now the bigger the event, the more we're able to raise, but also there's just some expenses that I physically, like.
It's fair to have expenses. It is. I mean, you just don't want them to get out of hand, right? So you think to yourself, what is a reasonable amount of money? So I can say to you, if you'll give me $100 and I can take that and turn it into $300, would you be happy with that, right? Or I don't know what the number is for everyone, but I think if I can take $1 and turn it into $4 has been my number, right? So if I can spend $1 and turn it into $4.
So you're doing some Jedi mind shit with me right now. Give me a ballpark. Give me a ballpark. Let's stop being so humble. You're on here because I cannot get over your list of achievements when it comes to raising charity. Not that you haven't done other things in your life, but it's really incredible. If I was to describe you as anything, it's that, man. Like, just an incredibly giving person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Oh, never. If there's a lot, let's move on.
$2 million for sure.
$2 million for sure. And I mean, I've been sitting on this 400,000 just.
That's
so,
a great
excited.
number.
It's nothing
it's
to be ashamed
incredible.
of. But I just cannot believe the work you do, and then when I see your resume of charity work, it's just unbelievable. So where does that Like,
It comes
where does it come from, man? What inspires you to do that?
It's go back to my grandfather. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Attitude. I mean, and taking and reacting to situations and having cancer, and you pay it forward. You leave it better than how you found it, and then also my mom. She was an executive director for United Way when I was in high school, and so she was always giving back, and she's incredibly kind, as is the rest of my family. So it was kind of inbred in us that we're givers or organizers or fundraisers and trying to help, other people. But let's bring it back to my experience going through cancer in the chemo center, the cancer center, and just seeing some of the nurses that were doing fundraising, like with the Do Good Divas, and even. Here's a crazy story. Even the first day of chemo treatment, there was a gentleman beside me. His name was Todd Pike, and he was sick. He looked sick. His wife was laying with him on the bed, and she did not look good. He looked terrible. And I crossed his paths a couple other times in the hospital, getting scans and CT scans, but I was walking in. He was on a gurney, But I'll never forget the kind of the look on their face and how everything appeared to be going. And it was right around maybe my 5th treatment or so, he passed away. And I got to know his wife just a little bit. And you know what happened? Sorry, back up. I was playing squash, and I ran into a buddy of mine, Andrew Delabona, and he starts telling me about. He didn't even know that I was going through cancer, and then he finally did, and then he just started telling me about his friend Todd Pike. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Todd was beside me in the first day, and I think that's actually how I found out that he passed. And we had to actually stop playing squash, and we sat there for like 30 minutes, and we were both like very emotional, and then he told me about a fundraiser that was happening, and because he worked at Ground Effects, so you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So. Jim Scott hosts this fundraiser at the Kobodo, and I'm gonna say that it was 1,400 people showed up. It was absolutely incredible, and he was just with quotes raising money for Todd's kids' education. Like that was his goal, right? And he ended up raising maybe $40,000-$50,000 for each of them. But that was very inspirational to me to see. How the community really stepped up for a family in need. Before cancer, I was in my job and working and head down and family and me playing hockey and still doing other charitable stuff, obviously, like with Attitudes for Education and other things. But this was bigger. Like I felt like I should be doing something as well. And that's kind of when I started my own fundraiser too, while I was going through chemo to raise money for the information rooms there. But that was extremely inspirational to where I knew that there was going to be something that I wanted to do. And it actually took 8 years to figure out what I wanted to do, because hospice helped me, and so I wanted to help hospice, and I did. The Cancer Center Foundation, I wanted to help them, and I did. And Canadian Cancer Society, and In Honor of the Ones We Love, and Transition to Betterness, they all do great things that help our cancer community. I just never really had a thing there was never a clear path. But one thing that I did start to learn is that we deal a lot with the reactionary side of things. Right? So if someone's already has it, and then how can you make it better? That's what our community does very well at. So what I started with my wife and Harvey and Elaine Snaden was the Cancer Research Collaboration Fund. And what we're working to do, and part of our mandate, is to support cancer research projects that integrate work at the hospital and work at the university or the college. So it has to be academic in nature, but it also has to involve the hospital. So we're forcing the collaboration, which is something that I think our community could do a lot better at. All of our different organizations, whoever they are, need to work together more, because we can't work in silos. You want to solve a problem, you can't just, you're not, even as a family, if you feel unhealthy, you can't just do it on your own. You're going to need the support of your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents, your grandparents, right? Like, you can't just do it on your own. Our community is the same way. We have to work together to make it better, to have better outcomes. So, and then with that, our event is called Play for a Cure. And so the idea behind that is we have 8 teams. We have a captain for each team, a sponsor for each team, and their players have to fundraise to partake in the event. So they do all their fundraising, and the goal of the fundraising, they have a minimum that they have to raise, but the number 1 team gets the top draft pick of NHL alumni that are coming to the event. And we got some pretty cool ones. Like Adam Graves is our, like, when I told him how we were doing this and everything, he's like, I'm in. Like I got 10 minutes with him, and within like 3 minutes, he's like, I'm in. Whatever you want, we're good. You know, like, this is great. I love what you're doing. Just count me part of it. So, so he's one of the draftable guys. This year, our event is still kind of in limbo because of COVID, obviously, and it was supposed to be in March, but still kind of hanging on to a little bit to see if maybe something can play out in September, October. But we had Adam Graves, Mike Krushel-Niski, who is an awesome dude. Marty McSorley, Marty Turco. We had got local Michael Layton, Ali Frady. We had got Paul Coffey this year.
Wow.
Awesome dude.
Have you heard of any of these names, Case?
Marty Turco is from
These
the
are
Sioux.
all-
Yeah,
these are
that's
all guys
right.
from our,
Yeah.
heyday.
Absolutely. Turco and his brewery, Kingsville, and his
Brewery.
cousin Mark Muzzin, they are tremendous supporters of this, and they are one of our biggest sponsors. So they have a team. They have kick-ass jerseys. They took the old Michigan yellow jersey and they put the Kingsville logo on it. And actually, Marty and Layton were going to do an awesome thing this year, and we're going to do a shootout contest. So we were going to randomly choose 2 players from each team, and they had to go in and shoot on an NHL goalie. Just like it doesn't sound like a big deal, but
No,
like,
that'd be
that
cool
would
to
be
do.
a tremendous amount of pressure, right?
Definitely.
But yeah, so it was the idea is fantastic, and we've got a lot of support for it. I think not only for the event itself, but the cause, which we're creating a conduit, if you will, to support local cancer research by supporting researchers at the college or the university along with the hospital, and everything 100% stays local. We have no paid employees. No money goes to anything other than our expenses for the event. So last year we ended up netting $284,000 in our first event. Like, that was how much we made from it, which was absolutely incredible.
That's it's life-changing money for those institutions.
Yes.
So congratulations, that's phenomenal.
So we actually gave our first grant right after the event last year. Well, not right after, in June. And so we let the research council at the university choose the applicants. So people apply for this particular grant, which was called a Cancer Research Care Grant, because we don't want to be biased by anything, and we want the highest level of applicants, and has to be at the standards of research that would be acceptable by the university, which is as high as it can get in terms of research. And it turns out that Dr. Ham, my oncologist, won the first grant, which was like I was in tears the whole time. Like, we did this nice ceremony at the cancer center, and I got to hand her a grant that's going to help save. She's adamant that the grant that she's working on is going to save thousands of lives. It seems absurd, but she is helping develop an app and a protocol that helps patients align themselves with the appropriate clinical trial. Believe it or not, like, if you're in treatment and it's not working, and you need to find a clinical trial that maybe would be something that you could try, right, to maybe cure you. There's not a database out there that says where they are. Like, you got to go figure it out. Like, you've got to go to John Hopkins. You've got to go to Sloan Kettering. You've got to go to Carmenos. Like, you've got to navigate that on your own with the help of your oncologist or your family. Yeah, isn't that absurd?
It is absurd.
So the project that she's working on is going to help bring patients together, and so it's just it was a pretty exciting day, to say the least.
Man, that's amazing. Let's take a second, fill up your drinks. Just gonna read an ad. If you gotta go to the bathroom, hit the bathroom. So we are today, sponsored by our friends again at Axel Video, axel.com, Axel Films. They are a full spectrum video marketing company. They provide creative video services to small and large companies just like me and as large as the Toronto Raptors. If you're motivated to launch a new product or service, video content is super important. These guys will help you do it. They've also started to branch in. They've become a full service. They are going to do everything from in-house strategy, concepts, and writing, producing, capturing, editing your final branded video. If you are looking for help, please reach out to them, axelfilms.com, and tell them that Tony sent you. All right, so today, I wrote an article today that's going to be going out to my members in the next couple of days, and it was about when I broke my ankle. I broke my ankle, and this is like obviously 10,000 times less than getting cancer, but the metaphor was breaking my ankle was kind of like people in this COVID, and I think, going all the way up to the seriousness of what you went through is like, in times of peril, you realize what you don't need, right? And you realize what you really do need. And you said you made some drastic life changes coming out of this, and one was moving into Snapd, correct?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What did you realize that, like, I guess some things just didn't seem as important anymore after basically a new life, right?
Well, I think honestly, what opened my eyes was my experience in the cancer center, and that our community is way better than what's portrayed in the media. Maybe that's what it kind of comes down to. And I was sick and tired of everyone shitting on Windsor, and including Windsorites shitting on Windsor. We have an incredible community, seeing things, and now that I really know it, I was right. Like the nurses doing fundraising for their patients, the guys like Jim Scott, and how many people came out to support that event to help the kids. I get to experience that, well, not right now because of COVID, but I kind of get to experience that type of thing every day. Whether it be a group of people come together for somebody's 100th birthday at a Chartwell, to a massive event like the one that you hosted at WFCU. Like, those things are inspirational. And I really enjoyed my job, and I was in a job that, as an ergonomist, working with patients and doctors and nurses, helping determine causality and getting them back to work and all these different things, and really kind of maybe helping them get to the next stage of their work life, right? But after experiencing what I did at the cancer center, like, let's bring more positive energy to our community. So I was introduced to Snapd at one of my events, an Attitudes for Education golf tournament, and the photographer came out, took pictures, and then you see it, and it's like, you look through the publication and it's all just positive news. Like, it's all just good things, all the great things that maybe the other media sources didn't focus on, or maybe didn't spend enough time on, or not surrounded by negative news. It's all just the good stuff, right? The stuff that maybe I want to portray about our community a little bit more, and I want to surround myself with more positive energy, not just the negative stuff, or not negative stuff at all. So that's really what opened my eyes, right? Let's start talking about all the good stuff.
It's highlighted. What is the mission of Snapd then?
Let's talk about the good stuff. It's all positive news. Happy smiling faces, look at the camera, take pictures, publish them, social media, the publication, and show up. Like, there have been a ton of events that I've showed up at where, like, no other media source is there.
Yes.
And it's a high tea at noon, and there's like a bunch of little kids and older people sharing tea and dressing up. Cool. It's that's a highlight moment. It's a fun day. It's and we get approximately between 300 and 400 event submissions a month. I don't even go find the events. They come to me. They submit them online to us. So if you have an event that's going on, you can go to snapdwindsor.com and submit the event and invite us out to come. We'll even, these days, we're starting to cover events again. We just adhered to the rules, and we've got big lenses. We can stand far away, and we don't encourage people to kind of take pictures like we used to, but really, it's just about sharing all the good news and creating like a lot of energy around that. I mean, that's all it is, and I've come to know or meet a ton of people in the community, and what the great part is they're all like-minded, right? Like there's way more than, it's kind of infuriating when you go, like, even on your own Facebook page, and you'll see somebody makes a post, and there's always a couple negative comments and not enough positive comments. There's a ton of people that just, oh yeah, that's no good, or like that's a negative comment. I'm not going to comment on it. You don't have to comment on that person's negative side. Like, do your own thing. Just like support that person and what they're doing if you believe in it, right? But that doesn't happen enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's such a shift that I think needs to happen, especially with social media. Is like you can go on your phone and any different social platform and you just get overwhelmed with how much negativity there is.
Yeah.
And it's just nonstop. It's like one post after another. But for whatever reason, people are in a negative mindset, so that's what they want to read. And it's like if everybody shifts to something like what you're doing with Snapd and starts reading the positive things and liking those positive posts and positive photos and events, it's crazy how the perception on your day changes. Because now I'm no longer in this dark space all the time because that's all I'm surrounded with.
Yeah.
Now it's positive, and now those little things that bother you don't, because there's such a greater picture and better environment.
I like for the Ride Don't Hide event that's coming with CMHA. So I partnered with them, and I do a lot of posts on my social media outlet, and then I boosted one of their ads through my audience, and I wanted to help it out a little bit more. And I don't know how, but it got this on somebody's feed in Wisconsin. So he has this own graphic that he's created, and he posted it on my Facebook page. Says, "Fuck off. Keep this shit off my Facebook page, you piece of blah, blah, blah." Like, is that really big? Like, what is going on? Like, why is that such a big deal to you?
Man, people...
Stop being happy.
I can't...
I was shocked. I wrote back. I said, you know what? Thanks for that. I will reach out to Facebook. I suggest you do the same, that you don't want to see ads from here. And have a great day. Right? Like, that's all I do. Like, dude, like, why is it such a big deal? Why you gotta be like that? Like, chill out.
I mean, I think today it's odd that we're having this conversation. I have a coaching client that I talked to today who had a negative experience with one of our media sources. And my advice was, don't do battle of words with somebody who buys ink by the barrel. And that was something given to me years ago when I was run through the papers for some things I did with the police service, things I did for the right. However, they didn't see it that way. And I think and I have completely stopped with news. I don't know anything that's happening ever, basically. But I think it's so important that people like you are doing and bringing out the good. And like, I can tell you now, we've run 10 events probably that have, raised a considerable amount of money and have a considerable amount of people in the community show up. And I can guarantee the one media outlet that's there every single time is Snapd. Mm-hmm. They're all invited, and you're the one who shows up. And man, I can tell you that we, from a small business perspective, as a guy who's trying to make a difference, we appreciate that. So thank you so much for you and your team that are always seeming to show up and so willing to provide us, like small businesses, when we get content like that, like your amazing pictures.
It helps, right?
I mean, it helps me. And you guys are just like, here, use them. Here's like, what was Cruising Brews, like 500 pictures. Like, I got it. Like, it was crazy and like an outstanding pictures. So, thank you so much. And like Casey said, I think, when I was a cop, and say there'd be like the most there'd be a robbery happen or something would happen, and they would give a car that doesn't really drive around that much, like a lime green, Pinto, let's just say. Well, I'll be damned if you didn't see 25 lime green Pintos that day. Why? Because I was looking for them.
Right.
So if you start your day by just looking at these positive things, like Casey said, you are going to see positive things the rest of your day. That's why people believe in this gratitude, and that's why all these things really work, because what you believe and what you consume is what you become. I think that's huge, and we thank you so much for all that stuff that you're doing.
Cool.
So let's, if somebody does want to help you right now, like let's get into that. If we, how do we reach you? What do we do if we want to get involved to Play for a Cure, or this ride? Because I am a CMHA ambassador like you. We're contributing some workouts to that event. What can we do to help on either event?
Well, Play for a Cure, you could just reach out to me directly. We have a website, playforacure.ca, and you'll see all the teams at the bottom. And if you click on any of the teams, you'll see all the players on that team, and they're all local players that are playing on those teams, fundraising. And then there's some information at the top where you can actually donate, or if you want to learn more information about the pros that are possibly playing at this point, like it's a little bit up in the air, right? But if there's something that you want to do to participate or volunteer your time or support in some way, then just go to the website and you can reach me that way. For Snapd, we have snapdwindsor.com. We're actually doing a really cool thing right now. We're partnered with the City of Windsor, Tim Hortons, CMHA, Windsor Regional Hospital Foundation, and we're doing virtual augmented reality fireworks for July 1st. So one of the things that people are going to miss out this year is the actual live fireworks. So we have a new app out called Snapd Hub. So you can download that from the Apple Store or the Google Store, and you can download it. And on July 1st at 9:30, we have Chris Hadfield, the Canadian astronaut. He's going to be doing a countdown, and at 9:30 there's going to be virtual fireworks. So you can use this on your phone or your tablet, and it's simple as holding it up into the sky, and there'll be Canadian music, probably some local music, and cool fireworks, and you can move it around and you'll be able to reuse it. It's a really cool thing. Oh yeah, we did it for Victoria Day. It was really neat. It's very cool. Like it's something to do, right? And for the fireworks, like not everyone can blow them up in their backyard, which probably nobody should do. So it's something Canadiana to do, right?
Read the bylaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. So, first of all, thank you for coming along and for everything you do to our community. We promise in this the Tango One podcast that we're trying to hook you guys up with people from our network who are going to make you better, and you're truly somebody that I aspire to be as I move through this circle of people trying to raise money and do things for this community. I know Casey believes the same thing.
Yeah, well, you're a little humble dude too. You are doing tremendous things in this community, and I tell you, like when we had we received the AFP award, and I got on stage, and I was so focused on you. Like, you're such an inspirational human. I really love how you automatically connect. Like, even right now, like you have eye contact, and I think you're very honest. You have a lot of integrity, very honorable. Like, I love your energy, and I think carry on with what you're doing. Like, you're hugely inspirational. To see you when you were yelling at all those people on the rowers, like, it was awesome. I've been able to be around quite a few people in our community and seeing what they accomplish, and to see you and even Greg, what you were able to accomplish that day, but how you did it was incredible. So don't stop. Hopefully, Casey, I don't know you very well yet, but this is a good dude.
Absolutely.
The team takes a big part of this.
Absolutely, right?
So thank you. Cheers to that. That's a great way to end it. Thank you for those compliments, and thank you for showing up.
Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you for surviving the sun. Cheers.
It is getting warm.
Fans back on. Thank you guys. Have a great night. Enjoy. Make some plans. Take some action.